Good day. Here we have a Dell Inspiron 5491, part of the Inspiron 5000 series, and I need to replace the keyboard on it because it's apparently defective.
So let's go over and explain very quickly how we got here and how we've decided that the keyboard needs a physical replacement before we actually go through it. And yeah, this is a great device, by the way. So if the keyboard's dying on it, yeah, don't throw it out. Just get the keyboard replaced. This is the specific model is a P93G001. And as you can see, it's in pretty good condition. So how we got to this place where we decided that the keyboard needs to be replaced. Keyboard on the left side stopped being fully functional, and on the right side it got questionable. Let's go with that. In particular, the enter key became quite difficult to use. The owner of this took it into Best Buy and they told it was a driver issue, which makes no sense to me, because if the middle of the keyboard is working and this isn't, that tells me there's something else. I've already pulled this apart and made sure that the connections are solid. After updating the firmware from Dell, updating the drivers from both Dell and Microsoft, resetting the BIOS back to factory, and as we said, verifying the connection, we decided that the best course of action is to replace the keyboard.
So let's fast forward to the end where I pulled the keyboard out so you can see what actually was wrong. And after we'd pulled the battery out and pulled the entire unit off, you can see that's your problem right there, boys and girls. The ribbon cable is damaged. Well, that's your data path, and that explains why some things work, some things don't. It's intermittent. Yeah, this was like this from the factory, and it was likely pinched for a very long time, and just over the years, the tiny little motions in the laptop just caused it to scrub a tiny bit of connection that was left off. All right, back to the show.
So how do you get through this? Well, this is not a trivial task. So the first thing you need to do is pull the back off. We're going to speed through a lot of this so that you don't get bored watching, but you're going to need some tools, and some of them are a bit specialized. We have a lovely small kit of screwdrivers. Actually, we have several small kits, specialized tools. We also have an open sesame tool, which is just a little piece of strong steel with a nice little grippy handle on it. We can use as a pry tool. It's just a pry tool. If you don't have one of these or some equivalent, just use a credit card or a any sort of plastic flat thing like these. Also, to get the keyboard out, from our recollection, we have to break, and I mean literally snap, about a dozen connections on here. This is not a trivial replacement. In addition to completely disassembling this unit, we have to break some snaps that hold the keyboard in place. And then the question is, well, how do you put them back afterwards with a new keyboard? Well, the answer is you don't, because they don't exist. So you can either melt parts of the new keyboard with a soldering gun, or you can do what we're going to do, which is just use some, high strength glue. I'm just going to use Gorilla Glue here. They're specialized, tiny tipped Gorilla Glue to get that keyboard to stay in place. All right, let's get to it. Just a note, I like to lay out the screws in the pattern that they're taken out. So I'll take this screw and I'm going to lay it, you can't see, but way over in the far side here, I'm going to lay it out just the way I took it out. And the reason for that is sometimes these screws are not the same. They may look the same, but they're not. And so you want to make sure you get the same screw back in the same hole. Okay, so in addition to best practices of laying out the screws in the pattern that they came out, you're going to want an uncluttered workspace to work from. This is a lot of little parts, and you're going to easily lose a few if you don't have a large area to work on. I can see here that this screw has a washer on the back, and I can just pull that out a bit, and you can see that it separates. Okay, so I'm just going to pull that out, and then instead of using my pry tool, because I'm assuming you don't have one, I'm just going to run this around the outside here and see if we can just pull this off. I've already had this apart. If it's your first time at getting it apart, you're going to want to take some compressed air, and you're going to want to blow that fan out. Even if it looks to be in good shape, blow it out. If you don't have any compressed air, just get down and blow it out. We'll start with the easy stuff. Hard drive bay. Something to note, if you don't have a magnetic tip screwdriver, don't bother trying to do this because the screws are too small for the human hand and you're just going to get yourself frustrated. Okay, when you're working inside these units, using a metal device, especially when you still have both the main battery and the BIOS battery on, not a good idea. This is not to be used generally. You want to use something that's non-ferrous, something that's non-metallic. So I'm going to use this. I need to pry this little plastic up, little tape up. Okay, and just back that off. There, it just slides backwards. There we go, it's out. That's a good thing. Pull the battery out. Next thing, watch battery. This is what keeps your BIOS settings. Just, you can leave that there for now. So now at this point, at least you're at the point where everything in here should be draining what residual electricity is stuck in here. You could remove the memory. I'm not going to, because I'm just going to pull this board out. I am going to remove the Wi-Fi card. You can tell it's the Wi-Fi card without reading it, because it has the antennas coming off of it. Now you can take the antennas off. I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to leave it connected, because these antennas are unlikely to get in my way. By the way, in case you're wondering, the two wires, why are there two? One goes under the keyboard, one goes behind the screen. Let's get rid of the heatsink. Get rid of the fan. Slide this connector out. Again, you could use a pry tool, but that means you're using metal on a circuit board. Not the best idea. And just lift this tape up. There you go. And to keep it straight, I'm going to put this little screw back in the same slot. Next, the SSD, it's a solid state disk. Let's pull that out. Now, in case you're new to this, this is actually labeled, which is great. So that's a 22 millimeters by 30 long. And you can take this little bracket and move it along here. If just while you're in here, if you want to upgrade it, it's not a problem to do. Just most SSDs now are 2280s, which are the longer sticks. And you think, well, I can't put it in because this is here. Yeah, that just pops out and you can put it in here. So you can upgrade it. The speakers are here. I don't actually have to pull these out, I don't think. So I'm just going to, slide the connector out, and I'm just going to fold these over to get them out of the way. You could get them out of this little snake tray. I/O board, that's this board here. It's your input output. Oh, it's even labeled I/O, isn't that nice? I believe this is just one screw and one pin. I could remove this I/O cable, but I don't see any advantage to doing that. I might as well just leave this connected. It's solid, it's not going to get broken. All right, let's disconnect the power connector right there. Just slide it back. It just pops up and it just goes back in with friction when we're done. So you can see what I mean about having a nice open workspace. If you're in a tight workspace where you're limited, you're going to probably get quite frustrated trying to keep track of everything. So this just lifts up and then out, but you know, this cable's long enough, I don't need to take this off. So to be clear, this is the video cable, and this little cable here, right here, is the touch screen. It's basically like a mouse connection. Yeah, this does not have to come off for me to get into that. There's a screw under there for me to get into that screw. Okay, let's get to the connections. The keyboard and the mouse have little doors, so it's very difficult to see. You grab them and you pop them up. So little black pops up, little black pops up, there you go. And now that just comes out straight, don't fold it. The keyboard has a little tab you can pull, there you go, so it's off. Now you notice this keyboard cable is pretty bunged up. Let's get rid of the brackets for the hinges and also the system board. Yeah, so the only reason you'd need to disconnect the video cable is if you were going to pull this right off, and I don't need to do that, so I'm not going to. I am, however, going to loosen up this tape. Boom! Yeah, so you didn't need to disconnect as much of the items here as you might have thought. Just to make my workspace cleaner, I'm going to take the entire display assembly and system board and move it away. So at this point, I'm going to have to start breaking connections, which I'm not happy about. So what I'm going to do before I do that is I'm going to open up my replacement keyboard and see exactly whether they replaced just the keyboard, which is what I expect, or whether it included the frame. This specifically says no frame. Okay, that's probably a pretty good clue. Something I should have done before I started working on this was to take this new keyboard and just make sure it's the right one, because I have received the wrong keyboard in the past when I've ordered keyboards from online services. But this looks to be about right. Specifically, this pattern down here looks right. Is start breaking these connections. You can either get a solder gun and heat these up, or you can just snap them off. Now, I'm just going to snap them off, and then I will use super glue to put them back. And I believe this black tape doesn't have to come off, because you can, I believe, get some of these points here. Well, maybe not, but I'm not positive, so I'm going to pull at least some of this off here. Yeah, there's one right there I need to pull off. Yeah, so you're going to have to very carefully back this tape off, because you're going to need to reuse it. Told you, it's a pain. Okay, now you might say, okay, smart guy, how do you actually get that out now? This stuff is heated in, these are not screwed in. You're gonna have to break them. So let's get to it. This is where you want a pry tool just to go around and start chipping away at these things. However, I'm going to try to use side cutters and see if that helps. Oh, this seems to be working. Yep, okay, that's that. Now that one bent as I pulled it up, so I'll have to bend it back when I'm done. When I pull it out completely, but you get the idea. Yeah, this does seem to work. Okay, let's try the side cutters just for fun. I'm wondering if they're too fat. Yeah, they're too fat. I'll try needle nose, which again is really more just for demonstration than anything. I think I'm gonna, oh, this seems to work. At least with that one. No, not with that one. From what I can tell, what's left holding it is these little guys along here. So we're going to have to really finish them off good. Yeah! Look at that, boys and girls. Not much left. There we go. Now, something to note. On this keyboard, there's your ribbon cable, and there's also an additional cable, and I believe that is for electricity for the backlit. And then there's these little guys to get off again. So these are the same ones that we've already taken apart, but some of them still have just a little bit too much on them. So let's try to pry this up now. There we go. Let's just do these one at a time. Fortunately, keyboard's going in the trash, so don't have to be too careful. Okay, now that we've got this apart and I'm just about to pop that out, you'll notice all these black little bits. They are not good for a computer. They're caught in fans and cause other problems. Also, if my glue doesn't work, what I'm going to end up doing is taking these plastic little bits and using a heat gun, well, a soldering gun practically, and reusing them. I'm going to put them on top. I'm going to heat up the little post that they were on, and I'm going to use this plastic as donor plastic to make this work. So I'm going to actually keep that little pile as a treasure, not as garbage. Okay, so this is still stuck in the middle here somewhere, and I just don't know why. Seems to be, oh, right there. Okay, that'll do it. Okay, so there's 1, 2, well, that was easy, huh? Not? Okay. Old keyboard, no sign of water damage. Let's put that aside. Clean it out. And this is where it starts to get tricky. You gotta make sure all of these little posts go down. And just start working your way down, making sure you hit every post that's possible. Now, these keyboard replacements are made for a bunch of units, so it's quite possible that they don't exactly line, yeah, see here? These posts do not exactly line up, and that is going to be a crisis. So what I'm going to have to do here is take this little tab. Oh boy, ooh, yes. And I'm going to have to make this sucker fit, because this is the unit I've got, and it does fit in the top of the tray, it just doesn't fit in the bottom here. Isn't that obnoxious? Okay, so, well, you play the hands you're dealt. Yeah, the keys fit through the tray well, but they don't fit on these posts well. So I'm gonna have to make a few adaptations. All right, that feels right to me. Take this little power ribbon and figure out how to get it through. Now, I know from just looking at the motherboard that this ribbon does go to, there's a header that this will reach called KBBL, so keyboard backlight. That's where it's gonna go. And this one has some 3M tape on it, which we won't pull off yet, but that's how you do it. Just pop that off, the backing, and that will help it stop sliding around, because we're gonna have to fold it to get it through the slot. Okay, so we've got the keyboard trimmed as far as these little metal locks go, and the most important thing is to make sure that the pillars that are on this plastic chassis fit nicely into the holes. And if they don't, you're going to be in hell. So Make sure they do. If they don't, and you can't replace the keyboard, you can't return it or whatever, then break those little pillars off. This one is not, so I'm going to have to break this one. Break this little pillar right here. Yeah, it doesn't line up. Okay, so I'm going to take my needle nose, and I'm just going to snap that off, that little pillar. And then I'm going to use something like that to smooth it out. Seems to be something right there. Is there another pillar there? There is. And that is not going in either. Okay, so off you go, little buddy. No, I'm not happy about doing this, by the way. But hey, you got to make it work. Needs some more work. If I had my X-Acto knife here, I would just slice it off. But I don't have one here, so I'm just going to have... There we go. That's our boy. Okay. Now, let's go back and 15th time's a charm. So that's fitting in pretty good now. And before you put it back on, what is it that we need to do? Well, when you pull it off, you may have bent something, and you need to make sure that it is dead flush. So you can see here, that's not. That's just not, that's just a little too springy. So I'm going to bend that back a bit. There we go. That feels better. Everything else now feels like it's going to go down nice and flush. You also want to make sure you bang off, yep, there's more plastic. Bang off any plastic, get rid of any bits. Make sure there's no metal, make sure there's nothing to go in there. And something you need to be thinking about is the keyboard that I pulled out did not have a backlit, well, it wasn't backlit, the new one is. That's what this is. This is the power ribbon for it. And you may look at the back of this and say, what are all these things? It's so confusing. No, it's not. This tells you where to make your folds and exactly the angles they should be at. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this ribbon cable and I am going to fold it right there. And you think fold it, you fold an electric ribbon? Yep, that's correct. Press it down. Don't try to, kill it. Taking the motherboard and just laying it over top and saying, well, where does it go? Well, that's going to be something like that. That KBBL's keyboard backlit. So I need that to come over here, and then I need it to be folded here, just like that little mark shows. And then I need it to go into that. I'm going to put it through here. I'm going to put it so it goes under here, like that. There we go. Okay, because that seems to line up a little better with what we're going to end up with. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to fold it over right there again on that 45-degree angle. And you'll notice on the ribbon, again, there are these, well, at least on better quality units like the one I've got, there are the marks, so you know where to fold. So you do that, do your folding, and then I'm going to put it underneath. There we go, so it'll go like that. Now, what I need to do is that ribbon connector has to go there. Well, how does that happen? Once again, see these white lines? Gives you a pretty good idea where folds could go. Now, it depends on what system you have. So, in my case, it's got to go through that metal chassis right there. It's got to go through that 45-degree angle right there. So how do we do that? Well, it's not very hard. Take your ribbon, and we know it has to go through there, so it's going to be on this first line. So take the ribbon and fold it on that first line. There we go. And again, you want it to be a crease, but you don't want to, crush it. You don't want to break the connections. Okay? Now, what we can do is we can take the backing off of this part, not this part, but off of this part. It's just tape, by the way. It's not like it's a big deal. When I say backing, you want to press it down and make sure it's in there pretty darn solid. There you go. Press it down. Good? Okay, so then we take that, fold that over, and just before I put some glue on here, I'm just going to make sure that this all makes sense and that it lines up as I expect. Because once I start gluing this down, yeah, it's not going to be pretty. I can see I made a mistake. This should be folded over here. Now I've got this crazy Gorilla Glue stuff. By the way, no, nobody's paid us anything for this. So you can believe what we say is what we think it to be. But this is pretty precise stuff. It dries pretty quickly. And I have seen people do this with a toothpick. It's right there. There it is. And then we take our metal backing plate, and before you start squishing it down, pass a smell test. Does all of this sort of make sense? Yes, this is put on the right way. I don't have any plastic bits underneath it. I don't have cables stuck. I don't have a ribbon jammed underneath, that kind of stuff. And then you just gently start popping it down. Let's take the ribbons, get those moved out of the way. There we go. Now, on this ribbon cable, there's another little bit of stickiness, so we can fold that over and get it straight. And there it is. Now, before we start laying this back down, you want to take your glue and hit all the dots. Now, one more thing to note. If you don't want to use glue, I have seen lots of guys use various heat sources to reattach. I don't think it's it's not that it's not solid, I think glue's a better solution. I think it's easier to use, I think it's faster, and I think it does a better job. Okay, that's as good as I'm going to get it right now. So what I'm going to do is put the lid on my glue, and I'm going to start putting things back in place to hold it in place. So I want that speaker there because I want to push that metal down and I want it to be solid. Make sure that's all pressed in and happy. Make sure it's pressed down and happy, I should say, all the way along, because if it's not, you're gonna be in hell. Yep, that's getting really sticky now, so that's good stuff. Okay, I now see why, when I pulled the old one out, this was bent, and that's because, yeah, the chassis doesn't align with this motherboard, and they just made it work. So I'm going to do the same. And then clip that down. Let's see. Yep, that's in pretty good. Okay, so that's that. And then the backlit keyboard, power light, isn't quite lined up either. But it's gonna work, because I'm gonna make it work. There you go. Fortunately, these ribbons do have some tolerance. And clamp it down, and I try to tug it out. Yep, no, they're not coming out. They're good. Hopefully you can see that. Got that little door lifted up, and now I'm just going to squish it down. There it is. Give it a gentle tug. Oop, came out a bit. Squish it. There you go. That's in tight. That's in. That's in. I'm pretty happy with this, actually. Okay, now before I put the batteries in, I'm just going to flip this over and just make sure that the keyboard smells okay, as it were. right, let's put the batteries back on. First, I'll put on BIOS battery. Boom. Then the main battery. Put the tape down to hold it. Take a final inspection here to see if anything's loose or screwed up, or if I missed a screw, or nope, this all seems fine. This ribbon, by the way, this is an extra disc chassis. You could put a 2.5-inch disc in this as well, but I'm not going to because I have an M.2 drive. Well, remember how I said I laid the screws out so I can't screw them up? Well, I apparently did. Even somebody that's a seasoned pro at doing this stuff can screw it up. So make sure you lay out your screws exactly as you took them out. Remember, these front screws go in at about a 45-degree angle. Okay, so signed in, I'm confident the keyboard's working, but let's just run Notepad. And we'll check all of the keys. There we go, boys and girls. She upgraded it to a backlit keyboard, which is much better. Now, just before we wrap up, there's 3 things to go over. 1, yes, this was one of the most challenging repair jobs I've ever had. I've changed lots of keyboards before, lots of batteries, hard drives, you name it. But that was a real pain in the butt. Secondly, the keys don't seem to stick out as far as I would like. They're fine. There's nothing below this surface grid, but I would prefer the keys to be up a bit more. However, it's fine. It's not like it's a crisis. And lastly, unless you're a pro or you're really into this, you're probably going to want to have somebody else do this for you. In case you're wondering, yes, you can turn the keyboard out doing this function plus F10. That turns the keyboard light on and off. Hey, if you like this video, please click like. It really helps with Google algorithm. Subscribe. We do this kind of thing all the time, along with a whole pile of Windows and Android and Azure and Office 365, Windows 10 and Windows 11 stuff. And if you have any questions or concerns, just put them in the comment section below and we'll get back to you, or somebody else sure will. And you can always visit us at www.urtech.ca. That's www.urtech.ca. Thanks and have a great day. Bye-bye.